So good evening, everyone. Bienvenue. Welcome to this General Law Admissions Workshop for the BCL JD program at the McGill Faculty of Law. My name is Andra Savanin, and I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Recruitment at the Faculty of Law. I'm really happy to be joined by my colleagues Nancy Semmel, who is the Director of Student Life and Learning, Josie Rota, who's a student advisor at the faculty, and one of our student ambassadors, Geneviève Westgate, who's going to be sharing her perspective as a current student. I'd also really like to thank my colleague from the admissions office, Anaya Curry, who's helping at the back end with the questions. Donc, comme vous le savez déjà probablement, le programme de droit McGill est fièrement bilingue et donc la présentation va se faire et en français et en anglais. Mais vous pouvez poser vos questions en n'importe quelle des deux langues. Donc, n'hésitez pas, don't be shy to ask your questions in either French or English. So I'd like to start this evening by acknowledging that McGill University and all of Montreal is located on Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, the Mohawk word for Montreal, originally founded by the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. This land is unceded, which means that it was colonized without a treaty. And as a descendant of settlers to North America, acknowledging as much is my way of promoting learning and generating allyship within our community. Donc, juste pour parler un peu du plan du jour et vous donner quelques conseils pratiques, la session de ce soir sera enregistrée, mais vos webcaméras et vos microphones sont désactivés de façon automatique, donc vous resterez anonyme. Veuillez, s'il vous plaît, nous poser vos questions via la fonction Q&A. Vous pouvez les poser à n'importe quel moment durant la séance, mais nous ne répondrons pas avant la fin de la session, pendant la période de questions. C'est possible que ma collègue Anaya partagerait des liens avec vous pendant la session si vous posez des questions, mais nous allons toutes vos questions en plus de détails vers la fin de la séance seulement. Nous allons procéder par un survol du programme et mes collègues Nancy et Josie de la faculté vont vous fournir plus d'informations pertinentes. Ensuite, je vais vous parler du soutien disponible à la faculté en matière de développement de carrière. Après ça, je passerai plusieurs minutes à vous expliquer notre politique d'admission ainsi que notre processus d'admission. Et avant de terminer avec la période des questions, j'inviterai notre étudiante ambassadrice à nous adresser la parole. Et donc, on va commencer. I'd like to start just by giving a little bit of an overview of the Faculty of Law for those of you who don't know a lot about the faculty and kind of explain to you why you might consider coming to McGill Law. So our faculty is actually the oldest faculty in Canada. The faculty has an excellent reputation, both nationally and internationally, and has ranked the top 20 law schools in the last 3 years. In September of 1999, the faculty implemented our integrated or transsystemic BCL JD program. At the time, this really represented a very new and innovative approach to teaching law, where instead of civil law separately or in 2 different classes, you learn both legal traditions at the same time in both French and English. For those of you who might have had McGill Law on your radar for more than a few months here, may recently that our common law degree designation has recently changed. So in November of 2019, we were actually given permission by the Quebec government to change our LLB, the Bachelor of Laws, to a JD, Juris Doctor. We had always maintained that the LLB was JD equivalent, and so the new degree designation has absolutely no impact on admissions or the curriculum in the program at all. Rather, it's our hope that the JD designation can just better communicate to the world what our common law training consists of. McGill's unique program ensures that all of our students will graduate with a cosmopolitan understanding of the law, one that isn't confined to specific legal jurisdictions or even legal traditions. Our students learn legal concepts comparatively through the lens of the common law and the civil law, with Indigenous legal traditions increasingly incorporated into our curriculum, as well as legal traditions from the world over. There is a real focus on teaching at the faculty, and as an alumna of the faculty, I can say that it sometimes has a reputation for being too theoretical and not practical enough. But I can tell you that this is not the case. And having a good theoretical base is actually really, really helpful when you go on to practice law later on. McGill Law is not going to teach you how to be a lawyer. In fact, most law schools won't teach you how to be a lawyer. You're going to learn how to do that when you write your bar, when you do your articling, and when you actually start to practice later on. What McGill teaches you how to do is how to think about the law so that you can develop creative and unique solutions to all different kinds of problems. And I would argue that this approach actually gives our graduates an excellent competitive advantage when they go on to practice. In 2016, there was a curriculum renewal at the faculty, so more transsystemic courses were incorporated, Indigenous legal traditions, integration and focus weeks. I'm going to let my colleagues Nancy and Josie talk a little bit more about those later on, but they're really great ways for you to be engaging with your colleagues, with your professors, and learning about law in sort of a smaller, more intimate setting. All of our students graduate with both BCL and JD degrees, which opens the door to practicing in all provinces in Canada. So you can write the bar of any province in Canada, as well as some in the United States, namely New York and Massachusetts, as well as some internationally. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The degrees really do open up traditional and non-traditional career avenues. So speaking personally, I actually went on to practice law as an in-house counsel at a large international transportation and logistics company directly out of law school, which was a very unique experience. And then I came back to working at the faculty in my current role. So I would say that I sit maybe in the more non-traditional career box, but we do have many faculty, students that go on after the faculty to practice in more traditional careers as well. I'll now pass things over to Nancy Zemmel to speak about some of the program requirements. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you, Andra. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Nancy Zemmel, je suis la directrice d'études de vie étudiante sur le bureau de secrétariat des études. Nos étudiants font une étude comparative des concepts juridiques qui intègrent le common law et le droit civil, ainsi que les traditions juridiques autochtones. Our goal is to ensure you leave law school with fundamental skills, intellectual rigor, critical thinking, problem-solving ability, disciplinary breadth, and contextual understanding. The BCL JD is a total of 105 credits. First year, you will experience a number of required courses totaling about 33 credits. Contractual obligations, the aim of this course is to examine theories of standards, principles, and norms governing these contractual relations in both common law and civil law traditions. Extra contractual obligations in torts is enriched by comparative insight of common law, civil law, and Indigenous traditions to explore notions of wrongdoing, injury, and responsibility. Criminal justice, this course will introduce the basis, nature, and functioning of criminal justice within and across legal orders with a focus on Canadian criminal justice. Indigenous legal traditions, which is new this year. The central aim of this course is to introduce students to the life worlds of Indigenous legal traditions, to prepare students for encounters throughout the rest of the law curriculum with specific instances of Indigenous law and legality. Integration workshop. This kicks off the year for first year students, Integration Week. During this week, students meet with a number of faculty members and alumni that cover a variety of legal topics, such as introduction to legal research, structure of the court system, critical race theory, case briefing, access to justice, public law, and ethics and professionalism. We have constitutional law, which is the introduction to basic principles and institutions and legal developments in constitutional law. Aspects to be studied include sources of Canadian constitutional law, federalism, the rule of law, division of legislative powers, the role of judiciary in Canadian democracy, Aboriginal peoples, and the Constitution and Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Foundations. Foundations is the principal objective of this course is to get you thinking about the law. It offers an initiation to law as a subject matter that goes beyond codes, laws, and judgments in order to question the nature of the law, to emphasize plurality and contingency and the power it has to produce social conditions far beyond the immediate actions of legislature or courts. I move on to second year, which is based learning and skill building. In second year, there are required courses of about 14 credits. You'll encounter legal ethics and professionalism, which provides an underlying of the regulation of the legal profession in Canada. There is property, which is a full year course. The course approaches property law from an integrated perspective, teaching civil, common, and Indigenous property laws. Advocacy. This course provides an opportunity to critical analyze and develop advocacy skills. Students are exposed to a range of settings, including mediation, trial advocacy, and written advocacy. And JICP, or Judicial Institutions and Civil Procedure, is an introduction to basic structure and values and problems of civil justice. All required courses are taught both in French and English. So students can choose which language they'd like to take the required courses in. In third and fourth year is putting knowledge into action. So in third and fourth year, students have an opportunity to diversify and complete courses in civil and common law, social diversity, human rights and Indigenous law, Canadian admin law, and as well as have an opportunity to write a term essay under the supervision of a faculty member. Vous trouvez une grande diversité des cours, une gamme surprenante des questions juridiques et politiques allant de droit constitutionnel, droit du travail, droit de l'emploi, jusqu'à droit de sport et de diversement droit des animaux et droit international humanitaire. We also offer Focus Week workshops. Focus Week workshops are offered during middle of the term when all upper year courses are suspended. And students have an opportunity to take a course that explores in depth a current legal issue or topic. Students in their final year have the opportunity to take a capstone project under the supervision of a faculty member. The capstone project enables students to find and use their authorial voice in speaking to their experience of legal education at McGill. We also experiential learning opportunities. We offer a wide variety of clinical settings where students can take advantage and build valuable skills through experiential learning. The outcome of these experiences helps to transition students from future roles as professionals, integrating legal research, legal writing, and advocacy skills within real world situations. So students really get to experience a real life and put the practice into advocacy, legal research, and writing. Now my colleague, Josie Rota, student advisor, will delve a little bit deeper into the program. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome this evening. So as Nancy said, as of second year, students complete complementary courses in the civil law, the common law, the social diversity, human rights, and Indigenous law, and administrative law baskets. You also take elective courses in multiple fields of law, going deeper into areas of special interest. Vous avez aussi la possibilité d'acquérir de l'expérience pratique au cours du programme BCL-JD. La faculté de droit offre de nombreuses occasions d'apprentissage par expérience par l'entremise des concours de plaidoirie. La participation à un tribunal interuniversitaire peut être l'une des expériences les plus enrichissantes à la faculté. Nous offrons un bon choix de tribunaux de cette nature dans différents domaines de droit. Ces tribunaux, en général, mettent à l'épreuve des aptitudes pour la plaidoirie en appel. Certains permettent de faire valoir ses talents en argumentation lors d'un procès, d'un tribunal d'arbitrage ou dans d'autres contextes. Auxiliaires aux tribunaux juridiques, une autre opportunité pour nos étudiants. Les tribunaux offrent une foule de possibilités pour les étudiants et étudiantes. Un poste de cette nature est souvent riche en défis et représente une expérience particulièrement gratifiante. Bien que le travail varie d'un tribunal et d'un juge à l'autre, les étudiants et étudiantes ont en règle générale l'occasion d'effectuer des recherches, de rédiger des mémoires en vue de conférences préparatoires à l'audience, de réviser des jugements, de rédiger des jugements, de rédiger des mémoires postérieures à l'audience et de collaborer à la rédaction d'allocutions et des différents textes. Dans l'ensemble, les tribunaux constituent un milieu de travail aussi stimulant qu'enrichissant. De plus, vous avez l'opportunité de participer à un échange. Le programme d'échange est de permettre aux étudiants d'aller étudier dans une autre institution partenaire sans avoir à payer des droits de scolarité normalement exigés à des étudiants étrangers. Vous pouvez choisir parmi plus de 38 établissements partenaires répartis dans 18 pays. La faculté de droit de McGill vous offre la chance d'ajouter une dimension internationale à vos études parce qu'elle a à cœur former des étudiants qui sont ouverts sur le monde. So if that wasn't enough, students also have the opportunity to participate in legal clinics, McGill Law Journals, and human rights. So legal clinics give students the opportunity to enrich their legal education through practical work experience in law-related fields. Students work in community organization and legal clinics, providing information and assistance to social disadvantaged individuals under the supervision of a lawyer. It also promotes a deeper understanding of the legal system's response to poverty and inequality. Students are confronted with the social reality of access to justice and the interrelationships between legal concerns and economic, psychological, ethical, and other social problems. The work covers areas such as family, consumer, criminal, landlord-tenant, immigration, environmental, and human rights. As for McGill Law Journals, students have the opportunity to participate in the operation of some of the student-run peer-reviewed journals at the Faculty of Law. Working for a journal is an invaluable complement to a student's legal education. The experience allows law students to be exposed to legal scholars of the highest caliber and to interact with some of the keenest legal minds in the country and around the world, while obtaining academic credit. Human rights internships, which are administered by the Center of Human Rights and Legal Pluralism, the program selects law students for placement as summer interns in NGOs and tribunals for 12 weeks. Partner organizations provide students with practical work experience in human rights investigation, monitoring, and reporting. The internships also provide exposure to the operation and implementation of international legal human rights instruments and norms. As Nancy had mentioned, the renewal of the curriculum introduced intensive focus week workshops. These one-credit pass-fail workshops are taught in an intensive period during the fall and winter terms and offer an opportunity to critically analyze and develop relevant skills from experts in law. They are given by practicing professionals to introduce students to current topics like election law, anatomy of a deal, wrongful conviction, thinking like an innovator, and la rédaction juridique. So I'll leave you again with my colleague Nancy Zemmel, who will continue to talk about our program. Thank you.
Et maintenant, on parle de durée du programme. Menant à l'adaptation de 2 diplômes de droit civil et common law, le programme est d'une durée de 3 à 4 années, selon le cheminement individuel et l'option choisie. It is possible to accelerate the completion of the program by completing summer credits and by taking a higher number of credits during the regular academic year, up to a maximum of 18 credits. This does result in a heavier course load. Extending the program from 3.5 to 4 years can allow the meeting of other commitments on the part of students, taking full advantages of the opportunities provided by the BCL JD program, which include exchanges, participating in the Faculty of Law's advanced programs, such as minors, majors, and the honors program. Students in the BCL JD program can further broaden their perspective and expertise by pursuing a minor, as I mentioned, a major and the honors program, and this usually requires an additional 15 to 24 credits, rounding out the program to a full 4 years. Minor programs. We offer a number of minor programs in both arts, science, and management. It allows students to graduate with a minor concentration and results in additional credits, like I mentioned, 18 to 24. So students typically will graduate with 123 when completing a minor. A major concentration. So we offer 2 major concentrations in the faculty: commercial negotiation and dispute resolution, or the international human rights and development. Both of these majors allow students to take courses within the law program as well as outside the Faculty of Law. You can choose courses in political science, economics, management, just to name a few. Again, it does require additional credits, typically an additional 18, although the major in whole is 36 credits. The majors also provide an opportunity for students to complete an internship, again, which allows you to work outside of the university and gain some of those key practical experiences. We also offer 2 joint programs, the BCL-JD MBA and the BCL-JD Masters of Social Work. The Desautels Faculty Management MBA program. This program prepares alumni for leadership positions in private, public enterprise, government service, large corporations, as well as management consultants. The School of Social Work MSW program is designed for students interested in transcending academic boundaries in social justice and in gaining an enriched perspective. My colleague now, Ms. Rota, will provide you with additional information regarding campus and faculty student activities. Thank you.
So there's always something happening at McGill's campus, whether at the faculty or beyond. There's clubs and activities, a full roster of visiting speakers, and plenty of opportunities for community service promise enriching ways to apply your legal education, as well as create a lifelong network of colleagues and friends. I also wanted to mention that the Student Affairs Office, along with the CDO office, we throughout the year we have various activities, guest speakers that we also invite for you. You will also notice that at the Faculty of Law, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we have universal breaks. So from 1 to 2:30, there are no classes offered. And this is an opportunity for students to participate, to attend, and to get involved in the student life and community at the faculty. Thank you. I leave the floor now to Assistant Dean Andra.
Thanks so much, Josie. I really appreciate you and Nancy joining. And just for everyone who's listening and who just listened to that portion, Josie and Nancy work in the Student Affairs Office and do so many things to support students throughout their time there. I can speak to that having gone to the faculty. So thank you both for that super helpful information. Josie just mentioned a second ago the CDO. So at the Faculty of Law, we do have a career development office that is dedicated to helping our students explore career opportunities that they might be interested right from the get-go, right when they start their law degree. So they're very active, very collaborative, regardless of what you're interested in pursuing. So as you can see here on the slide, they will help facilitate recruitment events and actively develop relationships with the potential and current employers of various kinds, including law firms, governments, local and international nonprofit organizations, businesses, and the partnerships and connections that they have are really national and international. So obviously Montreal and Quebec City are the two most local markets for our students, but we also have recruitment events with potential employers in Toronto, Ottawa, and other cities in Ontario, on the West Coast, Calgary, Vancouver, on the East Coast, Halifax, St. John's, in the US, and other international locations like Paris, London, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Just a note that approximately 90% of our graduates will go into the markets that I've listed here on the slide directly out of graduation, so law firms, governments, local and international NGOs, and businesses. But 5 years after graduation, up to 30% are dispersed even further. So I think that just goes to show you that a McGill Law degree is going to open doors to any number of different kinds of career paths that you might be interested in pursuing. So the CDO, in addition to the help that I just mentioned, they also organize career days to highlight diverse career options. They organize on-campus interviews, or OCIs. So these are days in which legal employers in Toronto, Ottawa, and some US cities will actually come to the McGill campus and will interview selected McGill Law students. Obviously, they are very much involved in preparation for the course au stage, which is the famous articling pursuit activity that happens within Quebec. They also hold various networking and mentoring events and hold a really, really helpful series of workforce readiness workshops, including career interest explorations, CV writing, interview prep, and networking skills. Obviously, they also have one-on-one career advising, and so there is a full-time person who is there to advise students on career options. And they work very closely with a number of student organizations to make sure that student organized events will go ahead as needed and as planned. I wanted to just loop back to something that I believe he spoke about, or maybe it was Josie, I can't remember which one, I'm sorry, but clerkships, so auxiliaire juridique. So clerkships are a really, really great way for students to get some extremely beneficial, concrete, practical experience working with a judge. We have a number of clerkships, obviously, that will happen in course so that you can actually get credit for, and I've listed here all of the different courts with whom you could potentially work while you're a student at McGill, so the Cour d'appel du Québec, Cour supérieure, Cour du Québec, Chambre civile, Chambre criminelle, Chambre de la jeunesse, the TAC, and a number of others. So there really are myriad opportunities for you to get some of that clerking experience while you're a student. After graduation, and this is one of the career paths that the CDO can help you explore, there are a number of different clerkships that you could take on. Obviously, the most coveted of these would be with the Supreme Court of Canada, but there are a number of others as well here that I've listed on the slide within Canada, and there are international tribunals as well. So we do have some graduates going on to work in these international tribunals. So the benefits of clerking, whether it be in course or after graduation, you can gain insight into oral and written advocacy, court procedures, and the judicial decision-making process. They allow you to develop excellent research, writing, and reasoning skills. And at some courts, clerks actually have the chance to consider and learn about policy issues as well as legal issues. So if that's something that you're interested in, do keep it in mind when you're thinking about law. So I'm really proud to say that 22% of Supreme Court of Canada law in the last 5 years were McGill Law grads. So we do have a great membership at the Supreme Court. A number of colleagues from my year went on to clerk there, and I think they found it to be a very, very interesting experience. Et donc, je vais passer maintenant, avant de passer maintenant ou de passer au processus d'admission et la procédure d'admission, je vais commencer avec quelques conseils pratiques. Donc, avant de postuler à notre programme, posez-vous les questions suivantes. Quelles sont mes motivations pour étudier le droit? Quelles sont les forces et les faiblesses potentielles de ma candidature? Dans quel environnement veux-je étudier? Quelle faculté de droit serait la meilleure pour moi? Il y a d'excellentes facultés de droit au travers le Canada, donc faites vos recherches sur la nôtre. J'ai mis nos handles pour plusieurs de nos médias sociaux sur le diapo pour en apprendre davantage sur notre communauté et nos activités, et je vous suggère de les consulter. Soyez convaincus que McGill soit la meilleure place pour vous afin de soyez convaincante dans votre demande d'admission. C'est super important. Un autre point, toujours, lire notre site web avant de nous contacter. Il y a beaucoup d'informations là-dessus et je vous promets que la réponse à votre question se retrouve là-dessus aussi. Un autre point super important, ne vous fiez pas aux informations que vous allez trouver dans les forums de lawstudents.ca ou sur les forums Reddit, des threads de Reddit. Les forums contiennent plusieurs informations fausses, donc utilisez toujours notre site Internet et notre équipe comme vos sources d'informations principales. Nous sommes là pour vous aider et j'ai mis notre adresse courriel sur le diapo pour vous. Et donc, pour passer maintenant à notre politique d'admission. Donc, la politique d'admission de la faculté a pour objectif de retenir les personnes candidates les plus aptes à étudier dans l'environnement bilingue, comparatif et transsystémique unique à McGill. L'excellence et la diversité sont essentielles à la faculté. En effet, nous estimons que l'excellence de notre faculté prend sa source dans sa diversité. Le comité des admissions cherche des indicateurs tels que la curiosité intellectuelle, l'engagement communautaire, l'éveil, incluant culturel, économique, politique, social et autres, la capacité de leadership, très important pour devenir avocat ou avocate, l'aptitude à travailler avec les autres, l'ouverture face à la diversité, la maturité, le sens éthique, le jugement et la faculté d'adaptation aux conditions tant positives que négatives. Les personnes candidates sont retenues par notre comité des admissions sur la base d'une évaluation globale du dossier d'admission, Holistic Evaluation, en tenant compte du dossier scolaire, les habiletés linguistiques, de la lettre de présentation personnelle, de l'engagement parascolaire, communautaire ou professionnel, ainsi que des recommandations de chaque personne candidate. Et je vais en discuter davantage prochainement sur chacun de ces éléments de votre demande d'admission. Donc, c'est très important. En fait, c'est une exigence de base pour le programme de droit McGill de bien maîtriser les deux langues, anglais et français, au niveau de compréhension. La réalité sur le terrain, c'est que c'est les études en droit sont déjà très difficiles. Et les études en droit, quand ce n'est pas votre langue maternelle, c'est même plus difficile. So the reality is that you're going to be exposed to complex readings in both French and English, and it's hard enough to do this in your mother tongue. So it's very important for us that you are able to comprehend French and English at a high intermediate level. It really is a mandatory element of your application to McGill Law. The reality is that in your first year and in your required classes, even if you do take the class in French or English, you are going to be exposed to readings, you're going to be exposed to speakers, you may be exposed to colleagues who are asking questions in the opposite language. So it's really important that you're comfortable. Exams, papers, and your compulsory moot or any oral advocacy project can either be done in French or English, regardless of the language of the course that you take. But the reality is that class interventions and exam materials may be given to you in both languages. Et des communications que nous allons vous envoyer de la faculté vont être vraiment bilingues, dans le sens qu'un paragraphe sera en anglais and the next one will be in French. So it's really important that your brain can work in both. If you need more information about the language policy, I would recommend that you head to our website. We do have a section on language specifically, and there is a self-evaluation there that you can do just to make sure that you would be comfortable in taking the class material in both French and English. The reality is that in your first year, most students will end up taking at least one of their first year classes in French. So for those of you out there who are first language Anglophones, as I was, when I started law school and thought that you might be able to get away with taking all English classes, it's very rare that this happens because class sections fill up very quickly. And in some cases, we're not necessarily going to be able to accommodate your needs. So make sure that you're comfortable coming in. Just to talk a little bit about the competitiveness of our program, I get this question a lot, and I would start out by saying that our incoming 2020 cohort was a little bit exceptional. You'll see here that we had 1,423 applications, 234 offers were made, 182 spots were in the first year class. The average CGPA of our students applying in the university and mature categories was 86%, and the average LSAT was 165. Normally, we would make closer to 260 offers. And I would say also that the academic average or the academic performances are generally not quite as high as that. And I've included on the right-hand side of the slide here an excerpt from our brochure where we show sort of our rolling 5-year average of our average undergrad degree percentage and LSAT scores. I'm going to talk about the CEGEP information in the next slide. So for those of you who are joining us and thinking about applying directly from CEGEP, I will get to you in just a second. But just to point out here that, don't necessarily look at this year's incoming class as the be-all, end-all. We did see that there was an increase, and I think maybe folks were just looking for some more certainty in making their decision about coming to law school in such an uncertain world that we're all living in right now with the pandemic. And so we saw a much higher number of very strong students at the very strong end of our applicant pool accept their offers than we normally would. Juste pour quelques informations, 18% de la cohorte de cette année provient du cégep et 22% ont une maîtrise ou un doctorat. 39% de la classe a fait le LSAT, évidemment excluant les étudiants et étudiantes du cégep. Et l'âge moyen de notre cohorte de cette année, c'est 24 ans. Pour ce qui est les personnes candidates du cégep, encore une fois, la quotaire moyenne des personnes candidates à qui on a fait une offre est plus haute que la moyenne des dernières années. Vous voyez ici que la quotaire moyenne de cette année, c'était 483. Dans les années antérieures, c'était plus proche de 34. Cette année, on a eu 445 demandes d'admission auprès des personnes candidates provenant du cégep. On a convoqué 84 personnes candidates en entrevue et on a fait 37 offres d'admission. Et normalement, entre 35 et 40 des places de la cohorte de première année sont prises par des personnes candidates du cégep. Et je vais parler un peu plus dans quelques minutes du processus des entrevues pour les personnes candidates du cégep. Mais encore une fois, c'est ça. C'était une année un peu différente pour nous, même pour les personnes candidates provenant du cégep. I spoke a little bit about diversity and the importance of diversity to the faculty a little bit earlier, but I wanted here to give some concrete numbers. So this is sort of gives a snapshot of the diversity of our incoming class. Some of these statistics are collected in the context of our first year student survey, as well as through the application process itself. The first year student survey is something that we will give out to students right at the beginning of the semester. Normally we would do this in person, but because of COVID this year, we had to do everything remotely. And so we saw a slightly lower response rate this year to the incoming student survey, around 85%. So here we can see that our students this year in this year's first year cohort come from 26 different countries of birth. The age range of our first year students is between 17 and 41. 25% of our first year students self-identify as being members of the LGBTQ2SI community. We have 18 different mother tongues spoken, including French and English. 8% of our students have having a disability. 9% of our first year students are first generation university students, so they are the first ones in their immediate family to attend university. And 37% belong to a visible or racialized minority group. So we really do have a very diverse community of learners and of contributors at the faculty. And when I was a student here, I think that really contributed to the richness of my experience. Now, to get into the nitty-gritty of the admissions requirements. So this is really what you want to be thinking about when you apply or when you start thinking about wanting to apply to McGill Law. So to start off with education. So all students who are applying to our faculty will either have to have a DEC, so a CEGEP degree, or a Quebec French baccalaureate from the two institutions that I've listed on the slide here, Marie-France and Stanislas, or a DEC and at most 30 credits of university studies. So those first two bullet points are really there for folks who are going to be applying under the CEGEP category. For everyone else who's applying under the university or mature category, you would need to have at least 60 credits of university studies in order to apply. And this means 60 credits of university studies at the moment that you'll be starting your legal studies at McGill. So in theory, this means that you could effectively be admitted and start your legal studies at McGill without having a completed undergraduate degree. Now, I said in theory because it's very unlikely that you will be admitted without being on track to complete your university degree before starting at McGill Law. There are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, you're far less competitive than the rest of the pool because the majority of our pool is coming to us on track to complete their undergraduate degree before starting their law studies. You're also doing yourself a disservice by not finishing your current degree. So I saw some questions in the registration form from people who were thinking about maybe wanting to practice in other provinces and other countries afterwards. It's really important to always make sure, if you know that you want to go practice in a specific jurisdiction, what that jurisdiction's requirements are with regard to education. I know that there are some states in the United States which require a completed undergraduate degree in addition to a JD to be admissible to their bars. So it's very important that if you know that you want to go practice in whatever, Pennsylvania, for example, that if they need an undergraduate degree, that you make sure that you get that before you apply to law school so that you won't disqualify yourself from being able to start the bar there. So that's what I wanted to say about your level of education that's required. More information about this can be found on our website as well. In terms of bilingualism, I talked about this a bit earlier. It is a passive bilingualism policy. Donc, c'est vraiment au niveau compréhension. So you really do need to have an understanding of French and English, oral and written comprehension. I'm focusing on French here on the slide because that's the biggest question that we get from students who are applying, especially from out of province. What level of French do I need? So for those of you who are familiar with the DELF system, it's equivalent to a DELF B2 level. And this is going to be assessed in the application form itself. There's a place where you have to answer some questions about where you learned French and what level of French you have in terms of oral, written, etc. We're also going to look at your transcripts to see if you've taken any university classes and your CV. We also ask your referees to rank you on French and English. I would say that for students who are coming from provinces where they may have done French immersion, having done a French immersion degree back in high school and not having studied French for 4 years or more, that's really not quite enough for us. We do want to see that you have at least some more recent experience speaking French or at least being exposed to French, because again, it is about comprehension. So do think about that when you're preparing your application. In some cases, we'll do a follow-up phone call where we will run through a French test with you if we feel that's necessary. And in some cases, if we're, we do that French test and we see that your French is good, but maybe not quite to the level that we want, you may be offered admission with a condition that you complete additional French training before starting at the law faculty. I will make a note here that for Indigenous applicants, we do recognize that in many cases, French or English can represent sometimes a second or third language and actually a colonizing influence. And so we do have financial assistance available for Indigenous applicants who need to improve their French or English to get to the level that we require for the faculty. If this is you and you want more information, I would invite you to get in touch with our office and we can provide you with that. So the last bullet on this slide is a little bit aggressive, but I really do want to drive home the point that if you don't have French in your application, you will not get an offer of admission to McGill Law. It doesn't matter if you have a 175 LSAT and a 98% average. French is a basic admissions requirement. To get on to the supporting documents that you're going to be needing to be submitting in addition to your application. So first, it's the academic record. So I'll start by saying, because I saw a lot of questions about this in the registration form, there is no specific deck, no specific major or undergraduate degree or field of study required to apply. We get people coming into our program from any number of backgrounds, from music, from science, from arts, philosophy, political science. So really anything and everything goes with regard to law. Really what we want to see is that you have, done relatively well in your undergraduate studies or your DEC or your graduate studies. So we're really just making sure that you have the academic chops to be able to make it through a difficult academic program, which law is. So you'll be needing to submit a complete academic record of all of your post-secondary studies. This includes exchanges or transfer credits. We're very used to seeing any exchange transcripts from international institutions. So If it's from the furthest place that you can think of, it's not a big deal. We're used to looking at those kinds of transcripts, but you do need to send those in to us. For the purposes of the application, unofficial transcripts are fine. For applicants who are or who were enrolled at a CEGEP, all you need to do is provide us with your permanent code. We will access your CEGEP transcript directly from the Minister of Education website. So again, for CEGEP candidates, all you need to do is give us your permanent code. What the committee is going to be looking for in your academic record is consistency, whether or not you've improved in courses, the difficulty and range of the coursework that you've taken. We don't have any particular thresholds or cutoffs. So a lot of questions about cutoffs. What's the minimum R score, GPA that I need? Really, you can apply with any percentage or R score. But what you need to consider is how competitive you are relative to our normal kind of class, incoming class. So just do keep that in mind, but don't automatically disqualify yourself because you don't think your grades are up to par. We really do look at your file as a whole, and so grades are not the only thing. For GPAs, for undergrad GPAs, we do convert it to a percentage scale. So we look through your grades based on your institution and we convert them onto the McGill grading scale, and then we convert it into a percentage. So we're very used to kind of putting everything on the same scale so that we can kind of not rank you, but sort of compare you to each other. The LSAT is not required for admission to McGill Law. So I'll repeat that. The LSAT is not required for admission to McGill Law, but if you're applying to other schools that require the LSAT, you are required to let us know that you are writing the LSAT or that you have written the LSAT. And this is very important. Don't try and hide the fact that you wrote the LSAT if you're not proud of your score, because that does not reflect well on your personality. You might be wondering, okay, well, if I don't have to write it, then should I? You might consider writing it if, for example, you think your other academic indicators aren't as strong. I would strongly discourage all CEGEP applicants from writing the LSAT. It's just not worth it for you. It will sit on your LSAT record for 5 years, and I have not seen great results coming from CEGEP applicants with that. So please don't write the LSAT if you're in CEGEP. Wait, there's no point in doing it now. So again, like I said, you might think about bolstering your sort of academic profile by including an LSAT score. I didn't write the LSAT when I applied to McGill Law. I know that it is a difficult exam. It costs money and it takes a lot of studying. So do think about the pros and cons of writing it if you don't necessarily need to because you're not applying to other schools. So I mentioned this before, we have no academic cutoffs or thresholds, but again, consider the competitiveness relative to the to the pool. And just another note about LSATs and GPAs, we are looking at a cumulative average. So for the LSAT, if you write the LSAT 5 times, we will look at your average score. And then for your GPA, we're going to be taking an average of all of your academic semesters. I will move on now to the reference letters. We require 2 references. We would appreciate or we would prefer that these be academic. And we do have a reference form that your referees will need to fill out and send to us directly. Professional references can be useful as well, especially if you've been out of school for a long time. I do recognize that a number of our applicants come in after having worked for a number of years and so may not have connections with professors the way that they used to. Again, just make sure that whoever you're choosing to be your reference is going to be able to provide the details about you that we're looking for. So take a look at our reference form, look at the academic and the personal attributes that we're looking for them to speak to about you, and make sure that you choose someone who can do that. Personal references, even if they're from a really impressive or well-known friend or family member who's a judge, who's a member of politics, are really less helpful because generally all these people can provide us with is conjecture about the specific attributes that you're looking for. So it doesn't matter if they're from the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister has had no experience with you working or teaching you a class, then it really isn't going to be that helpful to us. So again, look at our website for more information. The next elements of your supporting documents are your CV. So this is a CV that's tailored as appropriate for an application to law. We do have a site that you're welcome to use a template, so consider that. You want to highlight the achievements that you have that are of an academic and extracurricular nature. Any and all work experience is relevant. So it doesn't matter if you've worked as a legal assistant somewhere, or you've worked at a summer camp, or you've worked as the manager of a restaurant. Really, anything and everything goes on here. What we're really looking for is to see that, you know, you're able to balance priorities, that you are a leader, that you're responsible, that you have good judgment, those kinds of key attributes. It's really helpful if you include the number of hours worked during the academic year, because again, this can help us get a sense of how you're able to balance priorities. Same thing for your extracurricular activities, how many hours you may have devoted to any specific activity. And the length here is a 2-page maximum. So again, take a look at our website, take a look at the template that we've suggested for you. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to, but in all cases, make sure you respect the page limit. Moving on now to the personal statement, which I would say is probably the most important aspect of your application. This is a document that is basically going to allow us to learn more about you without necessarily speaking to you. So it should be very authentic. It should be original, of course, but it's really important that it's of substance and genuine. It should be convincing. It's really your moment. Choose your best language. You don't necessarily want to be writing in your second language just to prove that you have skills in either French or English. Again, our language requirement is really about comprehension. It's not about expression. And I would really strongly recommend against writing in sort of a hybrid franglais. French and English prose are very different, and so reading a document that is sort of a hybrid of French and English can be a little bit disjointed and distracting for a reader. So I would just say choose the language you're most comfortable writing in. If that is French, then that's great. If it's English, that's great, but stick with that. It should not be a summary of your CV or of our web materials. So you really don't want to spend time in your personal statement just rehashing all of the different elements in your CV. Oh, I worked for 6 months here. I was the president of this organization or this student group. Of course, you can mention those things, but you really do want to extrapolate and kind of tie those experiences to why you want to come to law school and why you want to come to law school at McGill. So the bolded point on the slide here, why law, why McGill, why you, are really the three sort of magic questions that we're looking for you to answer in your personal statement. Don't need to answer them in sort of a formulaic way. Really, you just want to make sure that those three questions are sort of guiding how you're writing your personal statement. Pour les personnes candidates écrivant en français, ce volet de votre demande est vraiment plus un énoncé de vos motivations pour poursuivre vos études en droit qu'une vraie lettre de motivation que vous soumettrez, par exemple, pour une demande d'emploi. Donc, gardez ça à l'esprit. Même si c'est toujours une lettre formelle, les formules de politesse qu'on voit très souvent dans les lettres de demande d'emploi, des lettres de motivation pour une demande d'emploi ne sont pas nécessaires ici. Donc, ce n'est pas nécessaire de terminer votre lettre avec veuillez agréer, madame, monsieur, l'expression de mes sentiments les plus distingués. Ça prend de la place. La lettre de motivation, de présentation personnelle, c'est très court, c'est 750 mots, 750 words. Donc, c'est ça, ne perdez pas des mots sur des formules de politesse de même. So again, maximum 750 words, really do use those words carefully. You don't want to be wasting space on saying things like, my name is Andra and I'm applying to McGill Law School. I'm in my 3rd year of my undergraduate degree. All of that information is captured elsewhere in your application. So really do focus in on the 3 magic questions that I talked about. And I can't stress this enough. You should be self-critical and make sure that you edit your personal statement multiple times. If possible, have someone else read it for you, share it with your referees, because it will give them something to sort of go on when they're writing about you, and really only submit your personal statement when you know that it's ready to go. Some additional supporting documents that I'll go over a little bit more quickly here. So firstly, there's the letter of extenuating circumstances. This is really for situations where you may have had personal or medical difficulties, and you can use this document to explain how those difficulties may have contributed to a weakness in your application. Maybe explain some gaps or some holes. So maybe why you studied part-time for a certain amount of time, why you maybe didn't do so great on some classes in one semester or multiple semesters. Just some examples there. So you can also submit some supporting documentation if you so choose. We recognize that oftentimes it's difficult to talk about a lot of the circumstances that you might want to talk about in an extenuating circumstances document, and you might not want to disclose something of a personal nature. That's totally fine. It really is optional to submit. And when I'm talking about supporting documentation here, I'm saying maybe letters from doctors or psychologists or something like that. Only one version of this document is accepted, and obviously, as with all other elements of your application, it will be treated with the utmost confidentiality by the members of our office. For Indigenous applicants, so our instructions for Indigenous applicants have changed. All Indigenous applicants are very welcome and encouraged to self-identify on our application form. There is a spot for you to identify as being an Indigenous person. We recognize that Indigenous peoples are distinct from other equity-seeking groups in light of the historical and structural effects of colonialism that they've experienced. And we're really sensitive to the varied ways in which Indigenous peoples are affected. So for this reason, we're really interested in learning more and understanding Indigenous applicants' connection to community, or if this connection doesn't exist or does not yet exist, the kinds of connections that the Indigenous applicant would like to establish with the Indigenous community through law school. So this letter is required for anyone who has self-identified on the application form, and you'll be prompted by our office to submit that. This can be a letter. You can also submit a letter of support from a community or some form of evidence of membership in the community. That's not required if you want to, but really what we're looking for is that letter elaborating on the connection to the Indigenous community, or again, like I said, if one doesn't exist, what your plans might be for law school in that regard. If you have any other questions about that, please feel free to reach out to our office for more information. Donc, je sais que c'est une question qui revient très souvent avec les personnes candidates provenant du cégep. C'est quoi la procédure d'entrevue? Donc, pour toutes les personnes candidates provenant du cégep qui sont potentiellement admissibles, on va vous demander de venir passer une entrevue avec nous. Dans certains cas, pour certaines personnes candidates dans la catégorie des adultes, on va vous demander aussi, mais c'est vraiment un nombre très petit de nos personnes candidates de chaque année. C'est vraiment plus pertinent pour les personnes candidates du cégep. Donc, les entrevues durent environ 25 minutes. Ils se font en présence de 2 membres de la faculté, de façon bilingue, donc et en français et en anglais. Et on va vous demander de vous présenter en personne à la faculté ou probablement pour l'année prochaine par vidéoconférence à cause de la pandémie. Les questions sont vraiment variées. Ça dépend vraiment, c'est qui est là avec vous pendant l'entrevue, c'est qui l'intervieweur. Mais le but, dans tous les cas, c'est de vraiment déterminer si vous avez les compétences que nous cherchons, donc incluant l'esprit analytique, la curiosité, une bonne communication orale, par exemple. Mais on va toujours vous donner plus de détails avant l'entrevue pour vous aider à préparer. Et normalement, les entrevues ont lieu au mois de mars, avril et en mai. Cette année, on a fait plusieurs au mois de juin juste à cause de la pandémie, mais on essaie vraiment de vous faire passer une entrevue en mars, avril et en mai. Donc, c'est ça pour la procédure d'entrevue. I'm going to speak now. I saw some questions about the impacts of COVID-19 on the 2021 admission cycle, as well as on the faculty's pedagogical approach. So with regard to the 2021 admission cycle, Because of the different ways in which different schools across North America and around the world really responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in the winter 2020 semester, including implementing mandatory pass-fail schemes or optional pass-fail schemes or satisfactory, unsatisfactory schemes, or not including or not calculating the R-score for the case of folks coming from CEGEP. We will not be including any winter 2020 grades. So that means both letter grades at the university level or the R-score for the CEGEP students. They will not be included in any of the calculations that we do in our office for the purposes of calculating sort of your CGPA, your academic performance. That being said, the admissions committee is going to have access to transcripts from those semesters, but is going to be instructed to obviously consider whatever grades appear on there in light of the very challenging and extenuating circumstances we were all facing in the winter 2020 semester. We're obviously also going to be flexible on this point as schools may implement new or different grading schemes in the coming months as the pandemic evolves. But for now, the winter 2020 grades are for sure not going to be included in those calculations. Obviously, fall 2020 candidate and advising and recruitment events will be taking place exclusively online. This event normally that we're hosting this evening is normally hosted in person. We have a great advising tool that you can use to book one of our advisors for an online meeting. I'm going to provide a link to that later on in the presentation. And we're participating in a number of different law school forums and fairs over the next couple of weeks. So keep your eye on our recruitment page for all of that information. With regard to the faculty at the university's sort of response to COVID and the faculty's pedagogical approach. So given Montreal's current level 4 red status, and just to give a little bit of a timestamp to this presentation, it's September 30th today, and the government announced that we were going into a red zone, I think yesterday or maybe it was Monday. But all that to say, so currently we're at a level 4 red status, which means a lot of shutdowns and possible further development of COVID-19. The university announced earlier this week that winter 2021 courses will be delivered primarily through remote platforms, but with enhanced in-person teaching activities planned across all faculties. So, for example, access to study hubs, student services, and other student-facing offices are going to be enhanced as public health guidelines will permit them to do so. Obviously, we continue to monitor the situation closely and will make adjustments as needed. As of today, there will be no changes to the Faculty of Law's programs with respect to credit loads or program requirements based on the mode of delivery. Therefore, year-long courses will continue to be delivered over 2 consecutive terms. And more specifically at the Faculty of Law, we have created an ad hoc committee on remote pedagogy that's really worked tirelessly over the last couple of months to articulate principles and compile resources for remote teaching and learning, as well as to provide guidance to instructors as they adapt their courses to this new online world that we're all living in right now. We have also instituted a new position this past year, so a 1L facilitator who has been designated to help coordinate the first year program and really create the best pedagogical experience for incoming students. So every day we're really undertaking careful planning and preparation in order to ensure that we can continue to deliver one of the best legal educations in the world in a way that is fully adapted to a remote environment. So more information will sort of come about this as the year goes on, but as of today, that is the situation at McGill. To chat a little bit now about tuition and fees, and I would say in all cases, do please check the McGill website, the McGill Central website about tuition and fees. unfortunately, at the faculty, we have no control over what tuition we charge. So this is really set at a university level, but you can see here from the slide that we really do have one of the most affordable law programs in Canada, even for out-of-province students. So something to consider. Montreal is also a place that has pretty reasonable cost of living, so something to consider as well. As soon as you receive an offer of admission, you can apply for McGill financial aid and bursaries, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. But we have a commitment to ensuring that finances are not going to be a barrier to you coming to join us, and you will know how much you would be entitled to receive prior to accepting your offer with regard to financial aid and bursaries. On the topic of financial aid and scholarships, because we do get this question a lot. So there are a few things here that I want to just highlight. So firstly, there is the McCall-McBain Scholars Program. This is a program that was newly instituted this past year after McGill received a very, very generous donation from the McCall-McBain Foundation. This represents full tuition for the entire program plus a living stipend. So extremely, extremely generous. Their application timeline is quite early, quite backdated relative to ours. So for fall 2021, their scholarship application is actually already closed, unfortunately, for those of you who are joining. But do visit their website to find out more information. If you're thinking of applying in a subsequent cycle, this is something that you should seriously consider because they are extremely generous scholarships. At the McGill Faculty of Law, we have a number of entrance scholarships that are available. All applicants to our law program are automatically considered. So there's no need to apply specifically for anyone. Everyone who is admitted is going to be considered for one of these. Approximately 25% of admitted candidates receive one. We did get a number of, or I know of a number of scholarships that are coming down the pipeline that might increase this number and hopefully will bring us more to a third of admitted candidates. But as of now, 25% will receive one. They can vary in value from under $1,000 to, I think our highest valued scholarship right now is just over $10,000. Some are renewable and some are just entrance scholarships. So more information on that can be found on our website. We make offers of scholarships generally between the months of February through September on a rolling basis. So if you don't hear about a scholarship, if you've been admitted and you don't hear about a scholarship until May or something, don't despair. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be considered for one. In terms of the McGill University entrance scholarships and bursaries, McGill entrance scholarships themselves are only available to those applying from Cégep. Donc, pour tous ceux et celles qui vont postuler directement du Cégep, il y a des bourses qui sont disponibles pour vous spécifiquement. For everyone else who is applying, unfortunately, the McGill entrance scholarships are really designated for first year or for first time students. So you're going to want to focus more on the bursaries that are available to you. So you would just need to complete a financial needs analysis through Minerva once you've been accepted, and we can provide you with more information if you get in touch with our office about that. So some key dates here that you should keep in mind. September 1st, our application opened. Obviously, right now we're in the middle of recruitment events. The deadlines here that you're really going to want to focus on are November 1st and November 8th. So those are the deadlines for university mature and advanced standing students. The March 1st and March 7th deadlines are for Cégep and Quebec French Baccalaureate applicants. And then May 1st is the deadline for anyone who's applying as a transfer student. Some other important dates that I want to draw your attention to here on the slide. So November is the latest LSAT that we would recommend that you take. We will accept the January test, but consider the impact that taking the January test will have on your application. We won't consider your application to be complete until we have an LSAT score if we know that you're writing it. And so by the time we get the score, if you've written January, it might be February, the admissions committee is already going to have seen hundreds, if not thousands of files. And so you might not be considered, or you may be less competitive, or just maybe there may not be room for you if we want to make an offer of admission. So those offers of admission are extended on an ongoing basis between the months of December and June. En février, c'est notre séance d'information pour les personnes candidates admises. C'est fort probable qu'on va faire une autre au mois de juin l'année prochaine. On avait fait une cette année au mois de juin, puis on a trouvé ça super intéressant pour tous ceux et celles à qui on a fait des offres entre les mois de février et juin. So keep your eye out for that. On fait des offres aux personnes candidates sur notre liste d'attente en fonction des places disponibles entre les mois de juin et août chaque année. So those are key dates. Keep your eye on those. En termes de prochaines étapes, donc la première étape, ça serait de déposer votre demande en ligne. So we do have an online application. For those of you who are applying also to Ontario schools, we are not part of the OLSAS law school application system, so make sure that you know how to apply to us specifically. This year, we've created a BCL JD checklist for you to kind of keep tabs on what documents you need to think about submitting. There are certain applicant categories that might be helpful for you there to think about. Supporting documents must be uploaded via Minerva, which is our centralized student data management system at McGill, but not your reference letters. So your reference letters need to come directly to the Faculty of Law from your referees. So again, all this information is on our website. Make sure you understand what the different steps are. Et ensuite, c'est votre responsabilité de vérifier l'état de votre demande sur Minerva. So really do check Minerva regularly. We will send you important messages through there. Make sure you have an up-to-date email address where we can reach you. Minerva takes sometimes up to 48 hours to be updated, especially around deadlines. So make sure that if you haven't heard back from us right around the application or the supporting document deadline, give it 48 hours for us to catch up. We receive quite a number of applications every year. I want to just also mention, and I should have probably mentioned this back in the referee section, but you need to make sure that your referees send their letters in on time. We're not going to reach out to them for you, so you have to sort of take the initiative and just remind them and say, hey, the deadline's coming up. Can I make sure that you're sending your reference letters in? And so make sure you have a backup plan if you're not sure if your referees are going to be able to deliver on time, because we will not be following up with them on your behalf. So I've done enough talking now. I'm going to pass things on to our student ambassador, Geneviève Westgate, who's currently a third-year student in our BCL JD program. So without further ado, Geneviève, please take it away.
Thank you. So as Andrea just said, I'm a third-year student at McGill. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I studied law, but I wasn't quite ready when I got out of CEGEP, so I pursued an undergrad in international development and environment at McGill. Why I chose to go to law school, I think law is something I always wanted to do. I know it's not a great answer, but it's just always something that's been on my mind. I studied environment, and I think I was also interested in understanding the regulations and also how to make positive change. Why I chose McGill? McGill, it was always going to be McGill for me. I only applied to McGill. It was only going to be McGill. First of all, it was for the bilingualism. I'm born and raised here in Montreal, so it was important for me to know the law in both languages. The transdemia for sure, because I don't know where I want to end up. I don't know if I want to go to Ontario. I don't know if I want to practice internationally. I have no clue. And so the transdemia allows me to have my options wide open. I'm also interested in McGill because of the size of the school. We're only like 180 students per cohort. I know other law schools I was looking at are like 400 plus students, and I think a smaller cohort for me, it was enticing because it made me feel as if like I was going to know my peers a little bit better, which is true. I also, the student experience at McGill, I was talking to some students who were already in McGill when I was an undergrad, and they told me that it was a lot, like when you're in the program, it's a lot less competitive because we're smaller, like less students at McGill, and also because not everyone ends up in the same field or in the same province. So it's a lot less competitive, and I could confirm the students are very collaborative. If ever you miss class, like there's so many people who are willing to help you and give you notes, and that's something that really enticed me about McGill. So in terms of my experience applying to McGill Law, in terms of my cover letter, actually Andrea said it pretty much exactly what I thought. First of all, I indicated why law, and that took a lot of reflection, and I would really advise against saying something very generic, because I'm sure there's a lot better answers. And then I indicated why McGill, and again, this is my advice to you. I wouldn't necessarily just say, for example, transsystemia without first of all knowing what it is, but also why that's important to you. If you put transsystemia in your cover letter, in my opinion, you should be able to explain why that's useful to you. And for me, like I said, it was because I potentially wanted to work internationally, and it was really helpful for that reason. And then if ever you wanted help in terms of choosing why McGill, what I did is I spoke to alums and also people who were currently at McGill, so students, and they were really able to help me understand why McGill was the best choice for me. And then, as Andrea has said, actually, I focus a lot on why McGill should choose me. So, like, for example, I indicated that I was going to be really involved in the school in terms of extracurriculars, etc., which I am now. And yeah, so those are my tips for you. I would also say I tried to make my cover letter original because I assumed they were going to read a lot of these, and that I obviously didn't want to repeat my CV. So what I did for mine is I made it, at the time it was 2 pages, so just a little note on that. Now it's only 1 page. I made it like a story, so I thought it'd be more memorable than something that was just like really repetitive. And then I reviewed it a ton. I asked my mom and my dad to make sure there's no typos. That's really, really important. I don't think if I had a bunch of typos, I don't think I would have gotten it omitted. Okay, in terms of your reference letters, just a tip from me. What I did is I went to my professors way in advance. I didn't wait the last second, but when I went to my professors, I kind of created a little package for them. And in the package, I had my cover letter already written, my CV, a transcript, where I highlighted the courses I've taken with them. And then if I've done a project with them too, I'll insert that in that little folder. So then they can get like a really good understanding of me and my personality and all that, and my grades. So that was really helpful. And then just a couple tips for after you apply. So be ready to wait. I think I was super eager and I thought I was for sure going to get it in November or December, but like maybe some people do, but I didn't. So just be ready to wait. The process is long and that's okay. Don't compare yourself to others, because I know, for example, I was like looking at the Law Student Forum, but also on Facebook, people getting admitted before me with like lower grades, and I was really confused, and it made me very anxious. Like, don't compare yourself to others. It's a very holistic application, so there's no point. I mean, it's just going to make you upset. And then lastly, I just want to say I actually got waitlisted to the program. So I got admitted in June, but when I got waitlisted in May, I wrote a letter of continued interest. There's no example of what this is. I just Googled some stuff, but basically what I wrote in my letter of continued interest was what changed since my original application. So I had higher grades when in May than I had in the fall, so I indicated that. And any other thing that changed, and then I reaffirmed the fact that I really still wanted McGill, and should McGill choose me, I would accept. So that's that. And then last thing I wanted to mention in terms of my experience in the program, first of all, I would like to say that the social life at McGill is great. Like I said, we're a small cohort, so everyone knows each other. Every Thursdays we have like a social event. It's called Coffee House, where basically students from all grades and also professors sometimes come together and socialize, which is great. We also have like really cool activities during the year, like apple picking and going to the sugar shack or skiing. We're probably not going to do that this year, but like, you know what I mean? In terms of extracurriculars, there's so many options for extracurriculars. There's, I don't know how many clubs and journals. For me, I was part of the student association. I'm obviously an ambassador. I was also an editor for one of the journals here, and I'm still doing, the Legal Information Clinic that they mentioned beforehand. In terms of job, I was a research assistant for a professor here at McGill, and now I'm working in the pharmaceutical industry in like in-house. I just want to say that to get the job that I currently have now, the Career Development Office was very, very important for that. They prepped me for my interviews, looked over my CV, everything, and it was so valuable. And now I'm actually clerking for a judge, as they mentioned before, which is great because it allows me to get skills and experience I wouldn't get in the classroom. And then now I'm going to go into formal recruitment, applying to Montreal and in Toronto. And then last thing I would say, in terms of student experience, many people might be wondering about the workload. I just, of course, when you're in law school, it's a lot of work. And I think it's mostly difficult in your first semester or your first year as you're still kind of figuring out how to read like legal text and cases and all that, but you do become more efficient. You are able to read faster as time goes by. And of course, what I do is I make reading groups, so you're able to discuss cases and share summaries with your peers. So it's totally manageable, the workload. I've never done an all-nighter here. I always sleep my 8 hours. It's not crazy at all. And that's all I have to say. So if you have any questions.
That's great. Thanks so much, Geneviève. I really appreciate all of that really valuable insight. I think some of the tips that you gave for the application process are tips that prospective applicants aren't going to get from anyone else, really. The admissions office is here to help you, but we're not going to give you that sort of concrete insight that Geneviève just did. So, and as you're speaking about your experience as a student, it made me sort of reminisce and nostalgic for my time. So it's great to hear that you're making the most of your time here. So, so that sort of brings an end to the main part of the presentation. We'd like to open it up now to questions. I know that there have been questions that have been coming in throughout the session, but in the meantime, I'm just going to leave this slide up here. So obviously, we are working remotely for the fall 2020 semester, and unfortunately, we won't be able to see you at our admissions counter as we normally would at this time of year or take your phone calls. But at all time, you can check out our website, you can send us an email, or the link that I've included at the bottom here is a link to our online bookings tool, and you can actually get access to this via our website as well. This gives you the opportunity to book one of our friendly admissions office team members, and you can actually have a video chat with them where you can ask any pointed questions that you have. So if there's anything, if we're not able to get to your question this evening, we're going to try and devote probably 10 to 15 minutes here, depending on how many questions we have. So if ever there's a question that we don't get to, please feel free to get in touch. So Anaya, I will ask you now. I'm not sure what's the volume of questions like in the Q&A.
So there's been a steady volume of questions. I've ended up trying to answer some of them directly, if it's a simple answer, a specific answer. Some people have asked the same question twice, so I'm sorry if I didn't get to answer your question. It might have been because I was saving it because it required a longer answer, or because I knew that Andra would be addressing it. So I have a few questions that seem to themes that people have asked several questions. So I'll read some to you, Andra, and you can try to answer your best.
Great.
So we have one from a CEGEP student who would like to know, what can I do to maximize my chances of being accepted into McGill Law? So there were a few from CEGEP students who were wondering, what, as a CEGEP student, can I do to strengthen my application specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously the level of kind of competitiveness at the CEGEP level is a bit higher than in the regular pool. So I'll start by saying that if you don't get in when you apply from CEGEP, do not despair. You have a lot of time to reapply later on, and so don't take it as a negative. Just take it as an opportunity for you to explore something else, and then come back and reapply after CEGEP. We have a lot of folks who don't get in directly out of CEGEP, and who reapply after university and they get in. So your chances are generally higher. I guess what I would say, in order to increase your chances of getting in, really, really do spend a lot of time thinking about why you want to come to law school now. When I read personal statements from people who are applying from CEGEP, I often find that there isn't enough in there, or they haven't done a good enough job at really explaining what the urgency is to apply to law school directly out of CEGEP. Coming in with an undergraduate degree will give you a lot more perspective, a lot more experience, and a lot more maturity, and that definitely shows through. So when you're thinking about providing that rationale for coming to law school, for coming to McGill now, really do spend the time thinking about that. Also, attention to detail in your application. I know that sometimes for CEGEP students, you may not have necessarily had a ton of experience, extracurricular experiences or work experience. And so some people I see try and pad their CVs to make them sound more impressive than they might actually be in real life. But spend a lot of time just making sure that your CV, even if it doesn't complete the full 2 pages, that's fine. And if you're thinking about trying to take on a lot of activities to bolster your CV, what I would say is that what we're going to be looking for is quality versus quantity. So don't take on a bunch of different activities that don't necessarily feel true to who you are. If you only get involved with 2 or 3, but you're there for a long time and you've moved up and you take on leadership positions, I think that's really more important than us seeing that you've sat on multiple committees or clubs or whatever, and you're just trying to kind of fill space on a page. Otherwise, obviously, grades are definitely important for us. So do keep that in mind. We are looking for students who are going to be able to excel in a law program, which is hard for sure. But again, grades aren't everything. We have a holistic admissions approach. So just try and take the time that you need. As CEGEP students, you do have the benefit of having a little bit more time to prepare your application at this point. Talk to your advisors, talk to your references, talk to your friends, talk to some alumni. Genevieve gave some great advice there that might help you better prepare yourself. And there will be a number of CEGEP-specific advising and recruitment events that are going to be held over the coming months in conjunction with our faculty and Central McGill Enrollment Services. So take advantage of those opportunities as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate as well, this question came in a few times. The deadline applications is March 1st. There's only one deadline. And just to reiterate, the BCL JD program is offered only to start in the fall. There's no winter admission. Only people who are allowed to start law classes in the winter are people who are not doing the degree program. So exchange students or special students who are visiting from different faculties. So I just wanted to reiterate that detail.
That's great. That's great clarification. Thank you, Renee.
Another question was, you just briefly touched on this, but are there any extracurricular activities or qualities that can make an applicant a better fit for the program than other things? So you sort of just answered that, but maybe, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, we get this question about fit a lot. I think a good sort of signal that you might want to consider looking at would be the personal attributes and the academic skills that we are going to ask your referees to talk to you about. So if you look at our reference form, there's a section where your referees are going to have to sort of rank you on a number of different attributes. So things like, leadership, analytical abilities, curiosity, judgment. I'm trying to go through the list in my head here. So those are the kinds of attributes that we are going to want to see in our students. So when you're thinking about choosing extracurricular activities to get involved in, think about, are these activities that are going to help me build those specific skills? So things like judgment, leadership, working with others, reading or writing, research, that kind of thing. So you can kind of use that form as a bit of a compass about what activities you might want to get involved in. But really anything and everything I'm not going to look more sort of highly upon someone who has necessarily spent summers doing research at a law firm than I would someone who has been a camp counselor for 4 years, because being a camp counselor is really hard and requires leadership and good judgment and a strong ethical sense. So just don't necessarily shy away from activities either because you don't think it necessarily fits the mold of what a traditional law student might look like.
And also I might add that, like, if you're doing what you think looks good, it might come across flat in your application because it might not be related to anything else that you're presenting, which might not, draw the connection to why you want to study law. Like, if it looks like you're just doing it to please other people, then it might not come across as strong in your application.
Totally, yeah.
Another question, this is a summary of a few questions that came in, but if you've done grad studies or additional courses, how will those grad programs be looked at when you're reviewing files?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the undergraduate grades for graduate students tend to be the focus of the admissions committee, simply because undergraduate programs are more similar in their academic rigor to law school than grad programs are. So those are the grades that we're going to be using to sort of look at your file and manage your file through the admissions process. But any and all graduate studies grades are going to be looked at and considered as well, not in the same way, but we will for sure be looking at them. And if we see, the case with me was that I did much better in my grad studies than in my undergrad studies, and I think that really did help me get an offer of admission to the faculty. So if you've done some really interesting research work in your grad studies, obviously the admissions committee is going to look at that. And especially if you can kind of link that to why you want to come to law school, I would say that that's really important as well. So we won't be doing the same sort of calculation of your GPA that we will do with your undergraduate grades, but we're definitely going to be looking at those graduate level courses as well.
The next question is, and I'm not sure if you addressed this fully already, because I was asking questions while you were talking, but is there any additional information for reviewing the extenuating circumstances letters? How much importance is accorded to that letter? Can that really help me get into law?
Good question. So I would say that it can help you get into law in as much as it helps maybe fill a gap or answer a question mark that the admissions committee might have about a certain element of your file. So you have to realize that we only have what we have in front of us, right? So if we have a transcript and we see that you've done really well all of your semesters, and then all of a sudden there's a semester where you sort of stumbled a bit, you sort of struggled, the grades that we see on your transcript aren't necessarily representative of the other semesters, or maybe you switched to part-time all of a sudden, or maybe you took an entire semester off and you don't explain that to us, we're going to be left wondering, well, what happened, first of all, and why aren't they talking about it? And so really do use that extenuating circumstances document to kind of help explain yourself if you feel like you need to about, a potential blemish on your record, for example. And the reason why we give you the option of submitting that additional document is that we want you to be able to focus your most of your efforts in your personal statement. The personal statement is short. And so we don't want you having to spend a whole bunch of time in there talking about your a situation that you may have gone through. So I hope that answers the question, but it can help you in as much as it will help us understand you better.
The next question I have, what is or are the most important factors in applying as a mature student?
Good question. So for mature students, I think one of the biggest things that the admissions committee is going to be looking at is why maybe all of a sudden you've decided to come back to school after being out of school for a long time. We are certainly looking to build a community at the faculty of folks with a number of different backgrounds. And I think mature students can bring a lot because oftentimes you've had work experience, you've been out in the real world, you have that more sort of concrete understanding of what the implications of law could actually look like. And so use that to your advantage in your personal statement and in your file. Talk about the experiences that you've had, why they've driven you to come to law school. It might force you to think about being a little bit more strategic about who your references are, because as I said before, obviously we would prefer academic references, but we understand for mature candidates, if you've been out of school for a long time, you don't have that connection there. You might be asking for professional references. So in some ways, being a mature candidate requires you to be a little bit more strategic about the different elements of your application. But yeah, really do kind of focus in on why it is that you're coming back to law school at this time.
Another question that the summary seems that a lot of people had a question about references and how to choose the best references. I know you covered this, but a lot of people asked, can I collect references and then use them in a few years? Maybe you just want to go over again how they should choose references and why academic references are the preferred source for references.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, law school is an academic undertaking, right? You're coming here to study law. And so academic references are important because they're going to be able to provide us a little bit more information about who you are as a student, and your attributes as a student from an academic point of view. I would strongly discourage against using references that maybe you've gotten a couple of years ago because, things change, right? And we're going to be wondering, well, why hasn't this person provided anything a little bit more recent? So I would suggest that you think about some of the profs with whom you have maybe a closer relationship. I know a lot of undergraduate classes are big seminar style classes, and so you don't necessarily have a lot of opportunity to engage one-on-one with a prof, but it could be someone with whom you worked as a research assistant, with whom you took a smaller seminar, something like that. Again, look at our reference form to see what attributes we're looking for them to speak to about you. So, we're going to ask them to talk about your oral communication skills. If you took a class with this person and never had to give any sort of presentation, maybe don't choose that person because they're not going to be able to rank you on that ability. So use the form to guide you. Make sure you choose someone. Obviously, maybe it goes without, or maybe it isn't obvious, but make sure you choose someone who will be able to give you a positive reference, right? Don't choose a prof whose class you didn't do great in, or who you don't feel like who you're confident will be able to speak positively about you. And make sure you choose someone who you have the confidence will be able to respect the deadlines. The last thing you want is stressing about a reference who is not going to be able to come through for you on right up until the deadline. I remember when I was applying, I think it was to law school, one of my references was really busy and I had to follow up with him like every day and it was really stressful. Don't do that. So make sure you choose someone that you've had a conversation with about why you want to come to law school, that you're confident can provide you with a positive reference and can talk about those attributes that we're really looking for.
And as a follow-up to that, can people who have been your supervisor in a stage or a placement be considered academic references? And also, if you're a mature student, can those references be professional professional references? So it's two questions.
Yeah. So with regard to sort of a stage or an internship or some sort of placement like that, definitely that's super valuable. I mean, generally in those kinds of positions, you're going to be practicing or sort of using some of the skills, those academic skills that we're going to be looking for. But I would say that if you're a current student, you should try and get a reference letter from at least one of your professors who you've taken a class with, because that, if you don't, we'll just be kind of wondering, well, why weren't they able to? For mature applicants, for sure, they can be professional references. We understand that getting references from profs from several years ago is probably not that realistic and might not necessarily be super representative of your skills today. So for sure, professional references are entirely acceptable in that case. But in all cases, in all circumstances, rely on the reference form and use the attributes that we're looking for as a compass for who you should ask to be your referee.
And then I know we're running time, but the last sort of batch of questions that I have grouped together are regarding how can I best demonstrate my level of French in my application? If you're not asking for standardized tests, how should I show, what are the best ways that the committee will understand my level of French?
Right. So firstly, use the application form itself. Use the boxes in the application form to provide any detail that you can about the different levels of French that you have in comprehension, speaking, writing. So make sure that you fill those out. Don't leave them blank, and don't say no if you do have some French there for sure. So that's step one. Step two would be, obviously, if you've taken any French classes after completing an immersion program in high school, for example, that's really helpful. So if you have French classes on your university transcript, that's really great. We're going to be looking at those. Otherwise, you will want to emphasize any activities where you have had to use French on your CV. So whether that be, internships, studies abroad, trips abroad, membership in clubs where you've had to use your French, and that you can demonstrate that you've kind of kept up the skills that you built earlier on. That's key. Again, for the references, we do ask your referees to the extent that they're able, speak to your level of French. So you might want to think about choosing a reference who is going to also be able to talk about the level of French that you have. So we know that not all referees are going to be able to do that, but if you know of someone who is going to be able to, then for sure include them. If you have any transcripts or certificates from standardized testing or from, for example, Alliance Française, you can certainly submit that to us as well, because we're going to be looking at that, even if it's not taken at a university level. And I know you often get questions about French. So is there anything else that you would add there, just in terms of the evidence that they can provide?
Well, as you said, so the committee will be looking to your CV and form to see, like, have you ever lived in a place where it's obvious that you would have had to be exposed to or speak French? Have you ever lived or worked in a place where you've learned French? And then again, the other thing is, if the committee isn't sure, the final step for us to be able to evaluate your French would be an assessment done by our office, and we would contact you to evaluate your French. So that's something that would happen much later in the process, but that's something as a backup, just so you know, like we are pretty thorough about making sure that people are equipped when they start the program and won't be struggling with language when they start the program.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are we out of time?
I think we might be out of time, unless there might be just like a really quick one that we could do.
There was one more. I know you covered this, but a lot of people were concerned about how the COVID grades would be viewed. But you did, like, I think you covered that pretty extensively.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be included in any GPA calculations. They will be, on your transcript, but we all know, all of the admissions committee members know how challenging the winter 2020 semester was. So don't really stress about that too much. We're going to be sensitive to the different types of impacts that different types of people had to go through during COVID. And the same thing, I can't recall if I mentioned, but we're gonna take the same approach with regard to your CV as well and your extracurricular activities. We recognize that a lot of people had amazing plans for summer 2020 that were totally thrown out of whack because of COVID. And so, if your summer 2020 activities certainly aren't as maybe robust as you would have liked them to be, we know what happened. So don't worry, we will know.
We're all adjusting. Yeah,
we're all adjusting.
And maybe everyone can be patient with us as well.
Yes, very true. Yeah, we're all getting used to working remotely and using all this new technology. So I think everyone, it's a year to be gentle.
There's one very quick last question. Is there a word limit on this applicants?
No, there is no word limit. So, don't write a novel, but there's no specific word limit. Yeah. Great.
Statement, probably.
Okay. Yeah, I would say maybe a page or two. But if you want to chat more about that, I would recommend that you get in touch with our office directly, and we can put you in the right direction, give you more guidance. All right. Well, I think then we've reached the end of our session here. I do hope it's been helpful. Merci à toutes et à tous. Je ne sais pas, Anéa, si vous avez le chiffre final officiel pour le nombre de participants et de participantes qui sont avec nous ce soir, mais je pense que j'avais vu qu'il y avait plus de 500 personnes qui se sont inscrites pour la session, qui est extraordinaire. Sinon, c'est pas nécessaire. Quand j'ai commencé la session, je pense qu'il y avait presque 200 personnes présentes avec nous. Donc, merci beaucoup d'être parmi nous ce soir. Je vous souhaite des bonnes chances avec vos demandes d'admission en droit. Try and look at it in a positive light. Try and approach your application to law school positively. This is going to be it's a challenging year for us all, but an exciting year as well. I think there are a lot of opportunities. And like I said, we're here for you. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to book us for a meeting. And do keep an eye on our recruitment page. I'm going to be at a number of different events in the coming weeks. So if you have an opportunity to meet up with me again, I would welcome that. So I will leave it there for tonight. And thank you all for being with us, and take good care.
Thank you, Andra, for having Nancy and I from the SAO
Thank
join
you
this evening.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.